Have you ever been completely stuck? Not because the situation was impossible, but because of the angle that you were seeing it from. The same problem that felt like a wall from one side looks like a door from somewhere else entirely. Today, we're talking about what happens when you stop trying to push harder and start asking a different question instead. What if I'm just doing it or looking at this from the wrong place? Welcome back to another episode of Healthy Mind, Healthy Life. I'm Sayan, and this is the space where we have real conversations about what it actually takes to live well in your mind, your relationships, and the way you move through the world. My guest today is Stan Lewis, a John Maxwell certified leadership coach, former US Naval officer, retired peace officer, federal mediator, and the author who brings a rare combination of lived experience and academic depth to the work of human transformation. Tan is also the founder of N-Word Journey and works with leaders and teams around what he calls the freedom perspective. The idea that shifting your vantage point isn't just a leadership strategy, it's a path to genuine mental freedom. So, Stan, it's great to have you here and excited to see where this conversation goes.
Lasan, I'm glad that you have me here. Wow, what an opening! I really like what you talked about there with the open door, and go back on that because I would love to, if it's okay with you and your audience, to just
Hmm.
build on what you said there about that door,
Yeah,
because
sure.
I have a story that goes right along with that.
Yeah, sure.
Uh, you know what I found is a lot of times we get stuck. We get stuck in a place of our own doubts and limiting beliefs, and that comfort zone that we call, you hear that all the time about, comfort zone and people being in their comfort zone. Well, let me tell you, the comfort zone is not always so comfortable. A lot of times it's really not comfortable at all. Uh, a lot of times it's more like sitting in a dark room. Sometimes that dark room is painful. Uh, and there's that little light, and we know we could get up and move toward that light, but we choose to stay where we are. But if we'll just get up and move toward that light, once we get there, there's that door. And when you said door, it reminded me of this. If we'll just step through that door and step into the light and close that which we have been locked in, many times by our own thoughts and sometimes by the thoughts of others, and combinations of our thoughts and thoughts of others, we can step out into a brand new vantage point and move on with our lives and become the best version of ourselves.
Yeah, that's so true. And Stan, I think before we really jump onto how we can achieve that point, you have like worked with a diverse background that includes military, law enforcement, mediation, and coaching as well. So you have spent your life in groups where people are stuck and the conditions are different, under pressure or in conflict. So curious to know, what did that all of that perhaps teach you about how human beings actually think and see?
Oh, excellent question, my friend. For the last decade, I've spent doing mediations between companies and individuals. Uh, I work for OSHA as a both as a federal investigator, supervisory federal investigator, and a mediator. And rather than be investigated by OSHA, a lot of time businesses would just choose to try to work it out with the employee that filed the complaint. And let me tell you, a lot of times they get stuck in their own heads.
Mm.
They'll come into the mediation going, "There's no way whatsoever we're going to resolve this." And I said, "Okay, all right. Well, I hear you. Let's just sit down. Let's try to work it out." And let me tell you, more than 70% of the time, parties ended up working things out. I just had to keep them at the table long enough for them to see past their own doubts, for them to believe, you know what, we actually can work this out. That the other side is not as bad as we thought they were. And so I have worked with a lot of companies, Fortune 500 companies in the transportation, banking, securities, uh, you name it. in the last decade, and mom and pop companies as well. People are people. We all have doubts. We all have limiting beliefs.
Yeah, I think that really opens up the conversation really wide. And it just forces us. I mean, we have all heard about this term that you got to think outside the box. So, curious to know, Stan, so on your point of view, how is changing the vantage points different than just thinking positively? Or the converse of it could also be true. But you used to praise vantage point shift, and I really want to understand what that means in practice.
Sure, absolutely, I could do that. Like right now, we're looking at each other over a video monitor. I'm seeing you from my vantage point. From your vantage point, you're seeing me. Sometimes when I work with businesses, I'll bring in a beach ball. And you know how beach ball has multiple different colors. And if I have 5 or 6 people that, put the beach ball in the middle, they all hold it with one hand, some will see red and yellow. Somebody else, depending on where they are, will see blue and green. It doesn't mean that the person seeing red and yellow is wrong. Okay, that's what they see from their vantage point. The other person see blue and green from their vantage point. It's sometimes getting past our doubts, getting past our limiting beliefs, it's just shifting our vantage point. We may not think that there's a solution to our doubts or a way past our limiting beliefs, but if we change from that red, blue, we move a little bit, and now we see that blue and green and go, yeah, there there is a different way to look at things. There is a different way to handle things. Another way that I could put so far as your vantage point, you've heard about the elephant s- uh, tied to a post as a baby elephant. It's a little fable that's told. Baby elephant tied to a post, little flimsy rope, little flimsy chain is strong enough to hold that baby elephant. But as that elephant grows up, the owner never really needs to change the rope, doesn't need to change the chain because the elephant's grown up thinking it can't break free. But if you were to ever get that elephant where it changes vantage point to see that, you know what, this is just a flimsy rope.
Hmm.
That's my limiting belief is that little flimsy rope. It's keeping me here within this comfort zone. If you can ever get them to step outside their comfort zone, they'll break that rope. And once they break it, they go, now they're looking back on it and they're looking at it in a different way. Okay. What other limiting beliefs can I break and move out of my comfort zone?
Yeah, that's a I think important point, and I'm glad that he brought it up because we almost don't want to admit um that part of our ourselves where we don't acknowledge the fact that all of us have limiting beliefs. At and everyone has a space in their life, and it's very important that you break free from those limiting beliefs. And I think this is a heavy mind show, and I think a lot of listeners are going to feel this question. How does being stuck in a fixed vantage point affect our mental and emotional health? And Stan, like, how can somebody get out of this, of their comfort zone, or if that's it's just not about comfort zone, but it's just about being stuck, having this limited growth, and that you're not able to really grow beyond a certain point because you're stuck with your limiting belief.
Well, people have to realize a couple of things. It's not only your limiting belief, but sometimes the limiting beliefs of others. They haven't really gone anywhere. And sometimes, and I know this sounds bad, sometimes people are uh, they're a little intimidated when other people want to step outside the comfort zone. But let's talk about how to break out. First of all, you have to realize that that doubt and that limiting belief, you have to call it out for what it is. If you never see that limiting belief as a limiting belief, if you don't see the doubt as doubt and recognize it for what it is, uh, it's going to be pretty much impossible for you to break out. But what you realize, say, hey, the only person that's limiting me is me. Uh, I don't have to allow this to continue. It did. You say, okay, now that I realize what it is, what are some of the ways that I can break out of this? Is there a mentor and somebody that I look up to, or somebody that has gone into the field that I wanted to go in? They may not even be in the same company as you are. They may be in a different company. You may know them at church. You may know them out in the community. There are people, believe it or not, that want to see you do well. And I had a mentor when I wanted to become a federal investigator. And it was hard. I applied a lot of different times, but he kept encouraging me. So I think calling it out for what it is, finding a mentor or somebody that you can talk to that believes in you are ways that you can begin to not only call it out for what it is, but to begin to step out of your comfort zone. And once you've done it, now go back and look inside yourself. In what other ways am I limiting myself? And then begin to call those out. And what baby steps, little small action steps, can I take to begin to move outside my comfort zone so far as that limiting belief and doubt?
Yeah, and I think just to add on to that, um, I would say this is not just a one-time, breakthrough. And
Correct.
I think it's important to remember to all the listeners who listen to this right now that building the habit of looking up and out again and again, until that becomes a natural way of moving through life. I think that is perhaps the key part of, this whole conversation, Sang. And I'm glad that you reframed such a complicated process because I think it requires most of us not being used to doing. Right. So I think deliberately pausing to ask where we are standing before we decide where we are going is rather very important. And I'm glad that you brought that up. And perhaps, I think that's the best note to wrap it up on as well. So it's just before we wrap this off, would quickly love to ask for listeners who actually did resonate with this conversation and wants to learn more about you, want to explore your work, where can they find you at? Where's the best place?
Well, they can reach out to me at Stan Lewis, STANLEWIS.net / home, HOME. And if you would, I have a little tool that would help people begin this process of stepping outside their comfort zone. I call it the Doubt Detox Worksheet.
Hmm.
And
Could you tell us more about it?
what it does is it gets you to do what we've been talking about here today, calling out those limiting beliefs. And I would take this sheet and set it back on the shelf because uh, you're such an intelligent young man to realize at your age that this is not a one-time thing. It happens again and again. And to have a tool, to have a mindset to recognize it and then begin to detox that doubt in your mind. And so what this does is it forces you to call them out, put some action steps in place, and then to act on those steps a little bit at a time until you walk yourself past that doubt. Uh, it's a tool for you and your audience. It's a way to add value. sir, to your people, and my way of saying thank you to you for allowing me to have the opportunity to be on your podcast. And uh, again, I enjoyed speaking with you. Uh, your questions were spot on. And you show a little bit of wisdom there, young man. I don't see a whole lot of gray there. I got all this gray. People say, hey, gray is a sign of wisdom. Uh, your audience needs to know that you got a little bit of wisdom there too, in the way that you ask your questions and the way that you try to, uh, seek out answers and things that are going to help your audience. In September, I have a book coming out. It's going to be titled "Evict the Doubts That Have Been Squatting Rent Free in Your Mind." And I would hope to have the opportunity to come back to speak into that. It's the doubts that we allow, uh, and the limiting beliefs that we allow to keep us from being the type of servant leader and the leader that we were meant to be. It is my way of trying to help people become the best version of themselves as a leader. But excellent job. I love your format.
Thank you, Stan, and really, really appreciate those words. And yeah, I mean, this is what we do. This is what we are here for, to spread, this wisdom across. To all the listeners who are listening to this right now, folks, would have all the details in the show notes so that you could easily reach out to Pan. And Stan, could you just once again say the website where they can find the tool?
You can find the tool. I'm going to pass the link on to you so that you'll be able to put it in your show notes. But they can reach me at my website at stanlewis.net /home, HOME, STANLEWIS.net /HOME.
Perfect, perfect. So we'll have that in the show notes, folks. And with that, we hit the minute mark on today's show. So, Stan, I personally want to thank you for sharing this kind of wisdom, across different fields and, years. I mean, multiple decades of experience, and sort of putting it across, one single, concise conversation. So I really loved it. And for the people who are listening to this right now, this is Healthy Mind, Healthy Life, which is part of the Healthy Mind by Avik Network, a global wellness platform that is built on a belief that a healthy mind is not a luxury, it's the foundation for everything else. So if today's conversation did give you even one new way of seeing something that you have been stuck on, I think that's enough. And do share this with someone who might need it. And until we meet again, this has been Science. And just want to remind you to be kind to yourself. And I'll see you next time.